Welcome back to Daybreak on Trust TV. Today, we turn our attention to a topic that speaks to our well-being, our environment, and the future of our city, gardening. From ancient civilizations that cultivated gardens for food, healing, and beauty, to the great botanical traditions that shaped modern landscaping, gardening has long been a reflection of how societies connect with nature. It is both an art and a science and expression of culture, sustainability, and the human need for green living spaces. Here in Abuja, the Nigeria's capital city, a city originally designed to be one of the greenest, most beautifully planned capitals in Africa, those principles once defined our environment. Wide green belts, parks, and natural buffers were meant to coexist with urban development. But over the years, economic pressures and rapid expansion have turned a large part of our city into stretches of concrete. Many designated green areas have been built over, leaving Abuja hotter, more polluted, and far more vulnerable to the environmental pressures we face today. Now, in the era of climate change, with rising temperatures, unpredictable rainfall, flooding, and declining tree cover, the need to reconnect with nature has never been more urgent. That is why the fourth Abuja Garden Show, scheduled for the 28th to 30th of November 2025 at the Sarius Palmettum and Botanic Garden in Maitama, is coming at exactly the right time. The exhibition brings together plant lovers, horticulturalists, environmental conscious entrepreneurs, and green-focused businesses in a celebration of plants, trees, gardens, and sustainability. To help us understand the vision of this year's event, the environmental challenges it seeks to address, and how gardening can support a healthier Abuja, we're joined by Mr. Chef Chidubem Obianuo, environmentalist and committee member of the Abuja Garden Show. Jeff, you're welcome to Daybreak today.
Thank you for having me.
You're welcome.
Thank you very much.
So, Jeff, let's begin with this. What personally drew you into environmental work and horticulture? Was there a defining moment that shaped your passion for green spaces?
Oh yes. So for me, I was like the average Nigerian that isn't too educated about gardening and obviously the philosophy behind it. But around 2020, during the lockdown, was when there was time for us to actually slow down and acknowledge what gardening is to us as human beings, and also philosophically to us, in terms of how we live. So the defining moment for me was COVID, because there was not a lot of movement that time. So there was a lot of time to really observe, okay, the difference between how this plant looked a week ago as compared to now. There was time to really slow down and just observe nature in its full majesty, essentially. So that was the defining moment for me.
All right, now we've heard the Abuja Garden Show, and now at this point, it is now in its fourth edition. Now, for viewers who may be hearing it for the first time, how would you describe what the show represents?
Okay, so first of all, you described it beautifully. Well, for us, the Garden Show is essentially a reminder primarily as to why it is essential to give attention to things that we don't really spend too much time on, and these things are elements that actually define our life and well-being. So to the average person that hasn't heard about it, I would say the Abuja Garden Show is a gathering of plants first and foremost, because it's a conservative space, then plant lovers as well that support this mission. And also the plant lovers can bring along curious minds too that can understand why this in itself is a mission and why it's so important.
Okay, now, Abuja was designed, like I mentioned in my intro, to be a very green and beautifully planned city. But lots of development have taken control, and now it's hotter and polluted. So from your perspective, what do you think went wrong?
What I think went wrong is the imbalance between the need to develop and the need to also, continue nature's, development down the line. So obviously for there to be more buildings, there has to be some level of deforestation. But the deforestation levels are not really matching the forestation levels, if you will, because we tend to prioritize just construction in a kind of unfair ratio as to how much we populate nature. So if the policies that had to do with deforestation also prioritized forestation as much as they did for deforestation, I think there will be a fair balance that can be achieved.
All right, now looking at, having to be able to have parks, trees, buffers, the lack of it would definitely affect ordinary days going on. But aside from that, we can understand that not every Nigerian has an interest in gardening, especially, or making sure that they do plant trees or forestation, as you mentioned. So how do you make people understand that it is quite important to have an eco-friendly environment?
Well, first of all, I think it starts with the education. So if we pay attention to the weather, over the past 3 years, we are hitting new levels of heat in terms of like the weather. So last year hit a record of 108 degrees Celsius, and that was like, and previously the year before that was at 102 max on the hottest day, and I'm talking like February in Abuja.
Celsius or Fahrenheit?
Fahrenheit, forgive me.
Thank you, because if it's Celsius, that's above boiling point.
Exactly.
Yes.
Fahrenheit, I meant to say. So these new heights that we're hitting, I'm on track to hit another higher one by next year. So these new tracks that we're hitting let you know that the world is hot, right? But doesn't have to be as hot if we are balancing out these these objectives that help control potential global warming. So it starts with the education first and foremost, because like we tend to perceive the presence of trees around us like potential insects breathers, or like snakes could hide there and stuff like that. So all these things need to be demystified. So it really starts with the education, and let them know that beyond actually grooming wild insects, all that, plants play a primary role that no other elements in this in this ecosystem can actually play. So it starts with the education first and foremost.
Understanding the importance of gardening or tree planting or having or horticulture, as you call it, right? You would see, I'll give an example. Usually sometimes these street gardens that you see that sell plants and all of that, when you pass through them, the should I say the temperature is quite different. You'd feel it cool down.
It's calmer too.
Yeah, absolutely. Quite different from when you move away from that. Just as you made mention of the Abuja garden show, you said it's a conservation, right? Can people feel the difference for them to understand that, yes, it is quite important when it comes to the environment, when it comes to the weather, when it comes to everything surrounding our daily lives?
Oh, they can. All they have to do is get to experience it, which is essentially why we hold the Abuja Garden Show, because as soon as you make your entrance into that space, even on the hottest day in Abuja, the temperature is different there. You almost don't need to be told, but if you have to be told, it'll be attributed to the plants that are around the environment. That's what maintains the temperature. So the same way it can be regulated within a space like Sarus Palmatum, it can be regulated nationwide. All it takes is strategic planting, intentional deforestation and forestation, and we'll see that we can actually create that balance. And guess what? It's not too late. We tend to think, okay, before this tree grows to this height and all that. No, that's almost never the case, because it takes so much time to put up a structure than it takes to actually just set up certain plants to actually support the structure long term. So yes, it is actually possible to expand that feeling.
Okay, now let's dive more into the fourth Abuja Garden Show, even though you have started talking about it already. What makes the fourth edition of the Abuja Garden Show special or different from previous years?
Okay, so first and foremost, there are so many more plants that are in the space that are being conserved now as compared to last year. Last year, I guess the ones that were in nursery states are so much bigger now, and the palm collection has increased over time. So the Abuja Garden, Sarus Palmatum has Africa's rarest combination of palms just situated within the botanical garden space. But now there's so much more than there was last year. Also, we have a water garden with water features. That wasn't there last year. That was pretty much in the works. But now it is alive, and there are plants, lilies popping out of it. So that's something to experience, because it's besides the Lovers Walk. The Lovers Walk has also been upgraded and stuff. So so much more. And this time around, there's so much more like chalet spaces within the garden for more people to just come and be with nature. There were just a few of them as of last year. So it's a whole bunch of upgrades that we're excited about so far.
All right, can you quickly walk us through some of the key activities of the exhibition, or exhibitions people should look forward to between November 28th and 30th, so that they can understand what they're about to experience?
Okay, so first and foremost, one of the things you definitely cannot miss is the exhibition of the plants. There will be exhibition of plants that aren't even available in Nigeria. These are like the rarest ones that are like literally going extinct and stuff like that. You don't get to see that collection just anywhere. So that's the first and most obvious thing, because there's a lot of plants being exhibited of different kinds. Then there's also, like I mentioned, the Lovers Walk. That's like it's a green space that just essentially is kind of like would you call it an Eden within the space for lovers, families to just come and like experience. Then also there's like the water garden, like I mentioned, which is just beside the Lovers Walk. That's something to experience, because people are not educated about just gardening generally, but water gardens to play their own space, their own roles. Like it's a different kind of world to groom nature, and that's something that we could just kind of like learn. Okay, so this is possible within like a small pond or something. So that's something
quickly, what kind of plants do you have in the water garden? Because people might understand that there are plants that they know about and are not specifically grown in water as well. So could you give us a little bit of detail of that?
Okay, so I'm sure you must have heard of the lotus flower.
Yes.
Okay, so that's primarily like grown in the water. And then also there's like the lilies. And when I see the lilies, like there's different varieties of them, but these are essentially plants that just kind of like they bloom like the lotus flower, and they're just like all up in the water space. So yeah,
there are lots of plants that people know about that haven't seen
in a reality, or
of course. And like I mean, I can remember first seeing a real life lotus, like actually holding it. It's really beautiful. There's a reason why the Chinese stress over it.
Right. So after the aside from the water garden, what else do you have?
What else? Okay, so there are photo booths, and also there's like a massive display of art as well. There's like aside the plants, because beyond just being a plant show primarily, it's also a display of art, but nature themed art.
Okay.
So there's nature themed complex art made of metal. But all these things are essentially reminders that okay, these are the products that nature inspires, because nature inspires all. So there's like an exhibition of not just plants and garden features and all that. There's also arts to be displayed, and also outfits, clothes with nature themes. So it's essentially a nature theme show.
I can see you wearing one.
Oh yeah, of course, the flowers all over the place. I have to represent. Yeah. So basically, more of this, more of stuff like that. Yeah.
You mentioned that the show brings together plant lovers, horticulturists, and environmental conscious businesses, and now you even mentioned arts. There will be lots of artists there. So what kind of collaboration or networking does the event encourage among them?
Okay, so in that case, just think of it like a space for synergy. So the plant lovers can actually understand why because the plant lovers, the horticulturists, and the other ones selling like plant themed stuff, these are all primarily plant lovers. But each person can explore where to kind of extend their curiosity to. Because I've seen plant lovers go into horticulturists. Now the horticulturists, those are plant lovers on a different level, because they actually take to the practice. They put their hands to the floor, right, and stuff. So basically, let's say you're a plant lover, you could actually understand the philosophy of the horticulturist and maybe come up with something there. It's really a space for synergy, because from the horticulturist you can actually get plant-based products. Like there are some people that exhibit skin products made from 100% plant-based, and that can come from kind of like a synergy between a plant lover and a horticulturist. So it's just basically like let's chop it up. Essentially, let's explore the synergies within this space, because we're all primary plant lovers. Now, how are the different ways that we can spread nature's beauty and nature's products beyond the current levels that we are?
All right, what do you think the impact will be, or what do you hope it would be in this year's edition with individuals, families, and the wider community in Abuja?
It's a very simple mission. It's just to spread the love for plants. It's something that is a patient mission in a sense, because you can't really like get folks to fall in love with gardening or start gardening ASAP. But if you can just, through a show like the Abuja Garden Show, introduce them to why it is necessary, to those basics, or just get them to admire it first and foremost, hand them their first plant or something, that can start something, that can spark up the next, global conservationist that would actually take this to the next level. It's all about just reaching to, especially the younger generation, because they're the ones that we're trying to groom to really grow up with this mindset. So to me, it's all just a chance for everyone to see why we care about gardening, and apparently why they should too, in a sense.
Okay, how accessible is the event? Are there opportunities for, let's say, school children or families or first-time gardeners to participate meaningfully? Is it free, or is it being paid for, the gate fee or something?
Okay. Well, there's a gate fee that is pretty accessible. So for the kids, it's about 1,000. Then for the adults, 2,000. We just tried just to make it like pretty accessible to those that are within the space and want to check it out. We don't want it to be like something daunting, because when you get in, there's still other activities to experience that are cost free. But obviously, if you want to buy something, you'd have to discuss that with the plant seller. But yeah, it's pretty accessible in terms of how you want to get in.
And you can actually buy a plant or an artwork.
You can buy a plant, you can buy an artwork, you can buy a rare plant, you can you can actually just come in and like the Lovers Walk, for example. That's a free experience. That's something you just get to experience. Then, not to mention the access to the botanical gardens, where you can actually see one of the most rarest palm trees in Africa, generally, like stuff like that you don't get to see every day, even if you leave the country.
All right. Now, Mr. Jeff, as an environmentalist, with the rising temperatures, flooding and air quality concerns in Abuja, we've seen it even during the rainy season. Everywhere was flooded, and with temperatures changing rapidly, how can gardening in small green spaces help build resilience?
Okay, well, gardening in small spaces, to be honest, there's really no like, I like to think there's no such thing as a small space, because in my experience with gardening, right, when you start with that small space, it has a way of just, it expands. It also lets you want to expand that habit beyond that space. If you leave that space now, you'd want to actually, so it's all about the habits, instilling the habits in everyone, because when you have that habit of gardening, any place you find yourself, you will prioritize having a plant there. Even if it's a concrete office, right, you would have one potted plant next to you, which can help filter the air and stuff like that. So the way I see it, all it takes is like, not seeing too little and just doing it, just taking the action, because we tend to think, okay, what impact am I going to make, if I just planted within this small cubicle space? But if 100 more of you did that in their cubicle spaces, we have an accumulative giant space created. And you can't have all the gardens within your space, but you can do the one that you can and have others do the same too. And that's how we get something that is collectively, accessible and just beautiful to everyone.
Okay, Mr. Jeff, what practical steps now can ordinary residents take, even with limited space, like you talked about, to start restoring and greenery around their homes and neighborhoods? That small space, what practical step by step will I take now if I decide to start like planting and make my space green again? Okay,
well, you could start with just one plant, to be honest. One plant is really...
What is the best plant to start with?
Exactly.
Right. So for beginners, for people that don't know that much, it is quite easy for you to leave a plant and it would just die on
like
you.
that.
Right? So what plant is the most resilient for a beginner to start with?
Okay, so for the most resilient, I would go with cactus, right? Because
it can survive the desert.
It survives the most drastic of weathers. But just to create a balance between something that is edible and not edible, I would say hibiscus, because that's both beautiful as well as it is resilient. So hibiscus is something that I think we're fairly acquainted with. But if you own your hibiscus, it's going to also beautify that space that it's in, because it flowers daily. Especially if it's getting water.
It flowers daily.
Flowers daily, yeah. Wow. It's an all-season plant. That's why we are able to have zobo all year.
It can survive in every season and every condition.
It does. So zobo is actually hibiscus tea. A lot of people don't know this. Yeah. So that's basically why we're able to have it all year, because it flowers daily. and can be, turned into. So I would say just start with one plant. All it takes is one. And that leads to, I started with one plant, and it was the hibiscus. Maybe that's why I'm recommending it.
Okay.
But ultimately, all it starts with is one plant. And even if you don't have the space, to get a potted plant, that works. The goal is just having a plant around you, first and foremost, that can then lead to you spreading the love for it, or, increasing your own reach.
Let me ask you this question. Is the cactus in the same category with aloe vera?
Aloe vera.
Because I think it's
they have this.
It's grows in every kind of environment.
Okay, so the cactus and the aloe vera are not really in the same family. Aloe vera is described as a succulent. Now succulents are those puffy, sharp-looking ones, kind of like aloe vera, right? But inside of them, they're pretty supple and soft, right? Cactus is more like, it's its own. It's
dry
made
in
for
and out.
It's made for like the toughest, harshest weathers. So cactus, like cacti, they come in different variations, but aloe vera is a bit on the succulent side. It needs more attention than the cactus does.
All right. Let us look at the challenges that you might face. So what do you think the major challenges you and your team face while promoting the greening projects in Abuja?
Well, I would say promotional challenges. Not everybody takes to this initiative at first, hearing like, oh, okay, garden, it didn't really concern me, stuff like that. It's not really the most, would I say, exciting type initiative to pitch, but one that I believe with time we would understand. All it takes is having the right minds that are actually acquainted with why these are so important. But unfortunately, a lot of people don't really take too keenly the importance of gardening. They just see it as something that is just primarily a waste of time if it's not 100% agriculture. It has to be something that can be industrialized or something. No, that's not the case. But nonetheless, that's one of our goals at the garden show, to keep making this happen, to keep doing this annually and just spreading the message that, look, this has to be done at some point. So it's a part of our mission to have that change with time.
Okay, are there any policies or government actions that you feel could significantly help restore Abuja's green heritage?
That's kind of like back to the conversation from earlier. If the policies prioritized, if they were actually not too harsh penalties, but if there were penalties for deforestation versus forestation levels, I think people will prioritize that more. And I actually think that they are, but not adhered to. Then the penalties for not adhering to such aren't really it's not really in play. So I feel like if there were policies that just balanced out the need to expand our cities and buildings, it would be different. Yeah.
So before we go, what do you hope Abuja will look like in the next 5 to 10 years if initiatives like the Garden Show continue to gain momentum?
Oh, green. That Maitama feeling when you're driving through Maitama or kind of like Ashokoro, more or less like the older streets in Abuja, like Wuse zones and stuff like that.
With all the greenery.
With all the trees around it. That's what everywhere should feel like. If you notice, the more newer recent streets that have popped up over time, Wuye and the rest of them, very nice spaces, but they lack greenery. So hopefully there will be more cities that actually prioritize, trees as much as they prioritize expanding their roads and stuff.
All right. Thank you, Mr. Chef Chidubem Obianuo, for coming to Daybreak this morning.
Thank you very much for having me.
And have a great show.
You too. Hope to see you guys over the weekend on the show.